He stood at the register, counting coins with trembling fingers. A grocery bill that exceeded what little he had, and a hungry 7-year-old waiting at home. She huddled in the corner of the store entrance, a cardboard sign and empty eyes that had long stopped expecting kindness. What happened that rainy Tuesday night wasn't just a transaction. It was the beginning of a journey that would transform both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Murphy's Market buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Ethan Miller's exhausted face. Rain pounded against the windows, turning the evening into a blur of grey and neon reflections. Ethan shifted his weight from one foot to the other, eyes fixed on the small pile of change he'd emptied from his wallet. $3.72. The cashier waited, her patience wearing thin as the line behind him grew. "I'm sorry," Ethan muttered, his voice barely audible above the store's ambient noise. "I thought I had enough." He glanced at the groceries, a loaf of bread, peanut butter, a small carton of milk, and a bruised apple he'd picked because it was marked down. The essentials to get his son through another day. Nothing more. The cashier sighed, already reaching to void the transaction. "Do you want me to put these items back, sir?" Ethan swallowed hard, the knot in his throat tightening. 6 months ago, he wouldn't have imagined being here, counting pennies, making impossible choices. 6 months ago, he had a wife, a job at the architectural firm, and a life that felt secure. Now, after Emily's unexpected death, the layoffs, and the mounting medical bills, he was left with nothing but a half-empty apartment and a child who deserved better than a father who couldn't even afford a proper dinner. "Just the bread and peanut butter," he said finally. "I'll put the rest back." As the cashier recalculated, Ethan felt the stares of impatient customers burning into his back. Shame heated his neck and cheeks. He'd once designed buildings that changed skylines. Now he couldn't even afford a $12 grocery bill. "That'll be $3.67, the cashier announced, not making eye contact. Ethan handed over the coins, careful to keep the last nickel in his palm. 5 cents, the sum total of his financial worth until his first paycheck from the gas station job came through next week. He gathered the bread and peanut butter, mumbled a thank you, and turned toward the exit, keeping his eyes on the floor tiles. That's when he saw her. A woman sat just inside the store entrance, protected from the downpour by the narrow overhang. Her clothes were mismatched but clean, a faded blue sweater too large for her frame, worn jeans and tennis shoes with holes at the toes. Beside her, a small backpack contained what Ethan assumed were all her possessions. Her sign was simple: "Anything helps. God bless." Most days Ethan would have walked past, not out of callousness but necessity. He had nothing to give, no capacity to help when he could barely help himself. But something about the quiet dignity, in the way she sat, not demanding attention, just hoping for a moment of humanity, made him pause. Their eyes met briefly. Hers were deep brown, tired but clear, no cloudiness of addiction, no wildness of mental instability, just exhaustion and something else he recognized immediately: pride being slowly eroded by circumstance. Without overthinking, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out his final nickel. It was nothing, an almost insulting amount, but it was literally everything he had left. "I'm sorry it's not more," he said, placing the coin in her palm. The woman looked at the nickel, then back at Ethan. A small, sad smile touched her lips. "Thank you," she said, her voice surprisingly soft and articulate. "Every bit matters." Ethan nodded awkwardly, suddenly embarrassed by the meagerness of his offering. As he turned to leave, holding his 2 grocery items close to his chest, the woman spoke again. "They're calling for freezing temperatures tonight," she said conversationally, as if they were just two neighbors discussing the weather. Do you know if the shelter on Westbrook is still open? I heard it closed last month. Ethan stopped. The Westbrook shelter had indeed closed, another casualty of budget cuts in their struggling Rust Belt town of Millfield. The nearest shelter was now in Greenvale, almost 7 miles away. It's closed, he confirmed. The one in Greenvale is still running, though. Greenvale, she repeated, nodding slowly. That's a long walk in this weather. There was no complaint in her voice, just quiet calculation. Ethan looked out at the sheets of rain, then down at the woman. She couldn't be much older than 35, though hardship had etched fine lines around her eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, dark strands escaping around her face. Something about her reminded him of Emily, not in appearance, but in the determined set of her jaw. The thought sent an unexpected pang through his chest. Look, he said, surprising himself, I live about 4 blocks from here. It's not much, but the building has a laundry room in the basement that's warm and nobody uses it at night. The side door lock is broken. You could stay there, just until the rain stops. The words hung between them, unexpected and perhaps inappropriate. Ethan hadn't planned to say them. They had simply emerged. The woman studied him carefully, obviously weighing the risk of trusting a stranger against another night in the rain. I'm Olivia, she said finally. Ethan, he replied, Ethan Miller. You'd let a stranger into your building. There was no judgment in her question, only genuine curiosity. Ethan shrugged. I'd want someone to do the same for me. The truth was simpler and more selfish. In helping her, he felt less powerless about his own situation, less like a failure. It's really just a suggestion. The laundry room is there whether you use it or not. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia gathered her backpack and stood. She was taller than she had appeared sitting down, but still slight, as if life had steadily whittled away at her substance. Thank you, she said. I'll be gone before anyone notices in the morning. They walked the 4 blocks in relative silence, the rain creating a curtain around them. Ethan pointed out the side entrance to Parkview Apartments, a faded brick building that had once been a textile factory before being converted into low-income housing. He showed her the laundry room, a utilitarian space with 3 washers, 2 dryers and a folding table, but it was clean and warm, the ancient radiator clanking as it pumped heat into the room. I'm in apartment 3C, Ethan said, not entirely sure why he was telling her this. If you need anything. Olivia nodded, already settling her backpack in the corner furthest from the door. I won't bother you, I promise. It's not... Ethan began, then stopped. You're not bothering anyone, just be careful. The building manager, Mr. Guzman, does rounds sometimes, but usually not after 8. With an awkward nod, Ethan left her there and made his way up the 3 flights of stairs to his apartment. His son Noah was where Ethan had left him, curled up on their second-hand couch, engrossed in a library book, the babysitter from next door sitting nearby. Thanks for staying late, Zoe, Ethan said, handing the teenager $10, money he couldn't spare but a debt he would never skip. How was he? Perfect as always, Zoe smiled, ruffling Noah's dark hair as she stood. He finished his homework and has been reading about dinosaurs for the last hour. After Zoe left, Noah looked up expectantly at the small grocery bag in his father's hand. What's for dinner, Dad? Ethan forced a smile. Peanut butter sandwiches, your favorite. If Noah was disappointed, he didn't show it. At 7, he was already learning to measure his expectations, a thought that broke Ethan's heart a little more each day. They ate their sandwiches while Noah enthusiastically explained the difference between a brachiosaurus and a diplodocus, his eyes bright with the uncomplicated joy of childhood. Ethan listened intently, pushing away thoughts of the woman in the basement and what might have brought her to that store entrance with a cardboard sign. Later, after tucking Noah into bed with promises of a better tomorrow, Ethan sat at their small kitchen table, bills spread out before him like a losing hand. Of cards, rent was due in 10 days. The electricity bill was 2 weeks past due. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Noah needed new shoes for school. The math didn't add up, no matter how many times he recalculated. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his calculations. Ethan tensed, instantly suspicious. Nobody knocked at this hour. He approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. Olivia stood in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself. Ethan opened the door, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Noah. "Is everything okay?" "I'm sorry to bother you," Olivia whispered. "The building manager came down to fix a leaking pipe. I managed to slip out before he saw me, but I can't go back now. He's still working." Ethan glanced down the empty hallway, mind racing. He couldn't send her back into the storm, but inviting a stranger into his home, with Noah sleeping just feet away, went against every parental instinct. As if reading his thoughts, Olivia stepped back. "It's okay. I'll find somewhere else. I just wanted you to know why I'm not in the laundry room, in case you checked." "Wait," Ethan said, surprising himself again. "You can stay here on the couch, just for tonight." Olivia's expression remained neutral, but relief flickered in her eyes. "Are you sure?" No, he wasn't sure at all. But something about her careful dignity, the way she held herself with quiet grace, even in these circumstances, made him trust her. Or perhaps it was simply that Ethan knew what it meant to have your life upended without warning, to find yourself in circumstances you never imagined possible. "I'm sure," he said, opening the door wider. "But I should tell you, my son is asleep in the bedroom." Olivia nodded solemnly. "I'll be gone before he wakes up. He won't even know I was here." She entered the apartment with the careful movements of someone accustomed to making herself invisible. Her eyes took in the sparse furnishings, the faded wallpaper, the small touches that marked it as a home. Noah's drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, a family photo on the side table, a child's jacket hung by the door. "Thank you," she said quietly. "This is very kind." Ethan shrugged, suddenly self-conscious about the obvious signs of financial struggle, the worn furniture, the bare cupboards, the stack of bills he had hastily gathered from the table. "It's nothing." Olivia looked at him directly, her gaze unwavering. "It's not nothing. It's everything to the person who needs it." There was something in her tone, a quiet certainty, that made Ethan wonder about her story. How does someone who speaks like that end up on the streets? But he didn't. Everyone had the right to their privacy, especially when they had so little else to call their own. Ethan fetched a blanket and pillow from the hall closet, handing them to Olivia. "The couch isn't very comfortable, but it's dry." "Dry is luxury enough," she said with a small smile. "Thank you, Ethan." As he turned to go to his room, actually, Noah's room, which they now shared since Ethan had sold the master bedroom furniture to pay last month's rent, Olivia spoke again. "You gave me your last nickel today, didn't you?" Ethan froze, embarrassed at being so transparent. "It wasn't much." "That's not the point," Olivia said softly. "You had nothing to spare, but you gave anyway." She paused, her next words careful and measured. People notice that kind of thing. Ethan didn't know how to respond, so he simply nodded and retreated to the bedroom, closing the door behind him. He slid into bed beside Noah, listening to his son's steady breathing, wondering what twist of fate had brought a homeless woman named Olivia to his doorstep on this particular rainy night. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by worry and the strange awareness of a stranger on his couch. When Ethan's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., he slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Noah. The apartment was silent as he entered the living room. The couch was empty, the blanket folded neatly on the pillow. Olivia was gone, as promised. The only sign she had been there at all was a small note on the kitchen table, written on the back of a receipt. "Thank you for your kindness. It matters, more than you know." Oh. Ethan stared at the note, feeling an odd mixture of relief and disappointment. He had questions he hadn't asked, things he wanted to know about the articulate woman with the careful dignity. But perhaps it was better this way. Two ships passing in the night, extending small kindnesses before continuing on their separate journeys. He tucked the note into his wallet, next to the space where coins should be, and began preparing for another day of struggle and survival. The next few weeks passed in a blur of long shifts at the gas station, evening job applications, and stolen moments with Noah. Ethan searched for Olivia occasionally, glancing at store entrances and park benches, but she had vanished as completely as she had appeared. Sometimes he wondered if he had imagined the entire encounter, the woman, the nickel, the night on his couch. Only the folded receipt in his wallet convinced him otherwise. It was a Tuesday afternoon, almost a month after that rainy night, when Mr. Guzman knocked on Ethan's door. The building manager's expression was grim, his clipboard clutched tightly in one hand. "Mr. Miller," he began without preamble, "I need to inform you that Parkview Apartments has been sold. The new owner is implementing some changes." He handed Ethan a formal letter. "This explains everything, but the short version is that rent will be increasing by 30% effective next month." Ethan stared at the letter, the words blurring before his eyes. 30%. It might as well be 1,000%. He was barely making the current rent. "Is there any flexibility on this?" Ethan asked, hating the desperation in his voice. Mr. Guzman shook his head. "The decision comes directly from the new management company. Apparently, the whole building was bought by some investment group called Phoenix Holdings." He lowered his voice. "Between you and me, they'll probably renovate and double the rents within a year. It's happening all over Millfield." After Mr. Guzman left, Ethan sank onto the couch, the letter crumpled in his fist. This was it, the final push over the edge he'd been teetering on for months. There was no way he could afford the increase, and affordable housing in Millfield was nearly impossible to find. He and Noah would have to leave, but to go where? With what money? The irony wasn't lost on him. A month ago, he had offered shelter to a homeless woman. Now he was facing homelessness himself. That evening, after putting Noah to bed with reassurances, he didn't believe himself. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, searching desperately for affordable apartments. There was nothing, at least nothing that didn't require a security deposit he couldn't possibly save in time. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Miller, this is Diane from Phoenix Holdings. We'd like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow regarding your tenancy at Parkview. Please come to the management office at 10 a.m. Ethan stared at the message, a cold dread settling in his stomach. Was this the formal eviction notice? He texted back a terse confirmation, then returned to his fruitless apartment search, a growing sense of panic threatening to overwhelm him. The management office was located on the first floor of Parkview, a small room that had once been a storage closet before being converted to Mr. Guzman's workspace. Ethan arrived precisely at 10 a.m., having called in sick to his morning shift at the gas station, a risk he couldn't afford but couldn't avoid. The office door was open, but Mr. Guzman was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a woman sat behind the desk, reviewing documents with focused attention. She wore a simple black blazer over a white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. It took Ethan a moment to place her, and when he did, his breath caught in his throat. Olivia looked up, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Miller," Thank you for coming. Please close the door and have a seat. Ethan remained standing, confusion and disbelief rendering him momentarily speechless. Olivia, what are you... How are you... I'm here representing Phoenix Holdings. She said, her tone professional but not unkind. Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss. Mechanically, Ethan sat in the chair opposite her, his mind racing to make sense of the situation. The homeless woman he had helped was now representing the company that was effectively evicting him. It seemed like a cruel joke. I don't understand, he said finally. Olivia placed her pen down precisely, aligning it with the edge of the documents. I owe you an explanation, she began. My name is Olivia Chen. I'm not homeless, though I was. Many years ago, I'm the founder and CEO of Phoenix Holdings. Ethan stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in the professional attire with the one who had sat on his couch a month ago. But the store entrance, the cardboard sign... I was doing research, Olivia explained, her expression softening slightly. Every year I spend 2 weeks living on the streets of different cities where Phoenix is considering property acquisitions. I don't make investments without understanding the community and its needs firsthand. So it was all an act? Ethan felt a surge of anger, remembering how he had worried about her, how he had given her his last nickel despite his own desperate situation. Not an act, an immersion, Olivia corrected gently. I was genuinely without resources during those 2 weeks. The rain that night was real. The closed shelter was real. And your kindness... She paused, meeting his eyes directly. That was very real. Ethan shook his head, still struggling to process. And now you're here to raise my rent by 30%. Actually, Olivia said, sliding a folder across the desk, I'm here to offer you a job. Ethan blinked, sure he had misheard. A job? Phoenix Holdings doesn't just acquire properties. We revitalize them while maintaining affordability for existing residents. We need someone to manage the renovation of Parkview, someone with architectural knowledge who also understands the needs of the community. She opened the folder, revealing a contract. The position comes with a salary that reflects your experience and education, plus a housing allowance that would cover your current apartment with the rent frozen at its current rate for 2 years. Ethan stared at the contract, then back at Olivia. How did you know I was an architect? A small smile touched Olivia's lips. While you were getting blankets that night, I noticed the architectural drawings on your desk. Then I did some research. You were with Anderson and Blair for 7 years before the layoffs. Your work on the Westfield Library renovation won a regional award. You investigated me? I investigate everyone who shows extraordinary kindness, Olivia said simply. And giving away your last coin when you can barely feed your son qualifies as extraordinary. Ethan felt exposed, as if Olivia had peered directly into his soul that rainy night and found him worthy of something he didn't understand. Why me? Why this? Olivia's professional demeanor slipped then, revealing a glimpse of the woman who had sat in that store entrance. Because 17 years ago, someone gave me their last $5 when I was truly homeless. That person changed my life, not just with money, but with dignity, by seeing me as a human being worth helping. She leaned forward slightly. You did the same for who you thought I was, without hesitation and without judgment. That says everything about your character, Ethan. She stood, straightening her blazer with a practiced gesture. The job offer is genuine. Take some time to think about it. The contract includes health insurance that would begin immediately, which I understand is important for Noah. The mention of his son's name jolted Ethan. How do you know about Noah? I know he's 7. I know he loves dinosaurs, particularly Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus. I know he needs new shoes for school. Olivia's expression softened. I pay attention, Ethan. It's how I've survived and succeeded. Now I'm paying attention to you and your son because you were paying attention when everyone else looked away." She extended her hand. "Do we have a deal?" Ethan looked at her outstretched hand, then at the contract with its promise of stability, of a future where he wouldn't have to count pennies or make Noah eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. A future where his skills would be valued again. Slowly, he reached out and shook her hand. "Why did you really come to Parkview that night? Of all the buildings in Millfield?" Olivia's smile was enigmatic. "Sometimes kindness finds its way. Home, Mr. Miller. Sometimes it simply returns to where it's most needed." As Ethan left the office, contract in hand, he remembered the note Olivia had left on his kitchen table. "Thank you for your kindness. It matters more than you know." He hadn't understood then just how much it mattered. Now, standing in the hallway of the building that would remain his home, maybe even become something better under his care, he finally did. One nickel, one moment of seeing another person's humanity. That was all it had taken to change everything. 3 months into his new position at Phoenix Holdings, Ethan still sometimes found himself doing a double take when he entered the management office. The walls had been repainted a warm ivory, the fluorescent lights replaced with softer fixtures, and the cramped desk where Mr. Guzman had once shuffled papers was now a modern workstation where Ethan reviewed renovation plans. But the most surreal part wasn't the office transformation, it was his own. Gone were the constant knots of anxiety that had once lived in his shoulders. Gone were the sleepless nights staring at past due notices. For the first time since Emily's death, Ethan could breathe without feeling like each inhale cost him something he couldn't afford to give. "Dad, look!" Noah burst into the office, brandishing a paper with an unmistakable red A+ at the top. "Ms. Wilson said my dinosaur report was the best in the class." The boy's eyes shone with pride, his new sneakers purchased with Ethan's first paycheck, lighting up with each excited bounce. Ethan pulled his son into a hug. "That's amazing, buddy. How about we celebrate with pizza tonight?" The casual offer of pizza, once an impossible luxury, still felt like a small miracle. Noah pumped his fist in victory before racing back out to the courtyard where Zoe, now his official after-school sitter rather than a favor-trading neighbor, was waiting. Ethan returned to the blueprint spread across his desk, making notes on the proposed community room renovation. Phoenix Holdings had a unique approach to property revitalization, focusing on creating shared spaces that fostered community connection while making minimal changes to individual units to keep rents stable. It was architecture with conscience, the kind of work Ethan had dreamed of doing when he'd first entered the field. A knock at the doorframe drew his attention. Olivia stood there, dressed in one of her trademark simple but elegant outfits. Today, a charcoal pencil skirt and emerald blouse that made her look both approachable and authoritative. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, stepping into the office without waiting for his response. In the months since their unusual introduction, their relationship had evolved into something neither professional nor personal, but hovering in an undefined space between colleagues and friends. "For the boss, always," Ethan replied, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Olivia smiled slightly at his teasing tone. "I've been reviewing your proposals for the courtyard redesign. The community garden concept is excellent. Thanks. I think it'll give residents a sense of ownership in the building's transformation." "I agree." She paused, studying him with that direct gaze that still sometimes made him uncomfortable, as if she could see past his professional facade to the man who had once counted pennies at a grocery register. "You're good at this, Ethan. Better than I expected, actually." He raised an eyebrow. "Should I be offended?" "Not at all. I knew you were talented architecturally. Your portfolio made that clear. But you also understand people in a way most designers don't. You see spaces through the eyes of those who will actually use them. Her compliment warmed him unexpectedly. I guess being on both sides of the equation helps. I know what it's like to live in a place like Parkview. Both. The challenges and the potential. Olivia nodded, then seemed to come to a decision. That's actually why I'm here. I'd like you to come with me to Philadelphia next week. Phoenix is considering acquiring a former manufacturing complex there, and I'd value your perspective. Ethan blinked in surprise. Philadelphia? But what about Noah? Bring him, Olivia said simply. The school district has a professional development day next Friday. It would just be overnight. We'd fly back Saturday afternoon. The thought of traveling, of actually leaving Millfield for the first time in years, was both exciting and intimidating. I don't know, Olivia. Noah hasn't been away from home since Emily died. He gets anxious about changes to his routine. All the more reason this might be good for both of you, she suggested gently, but it's entirely your decision. The company would cover all expenses, of course. Ethan considered it. A change of scenery might actually be healthy, and the opportunity to be involved in a project from the acquisition stage rather than after the fact was professionally significant. Okay, he said finally. We'll come. Olivia's smile was genuine. Excellent. My assistant will email you the details. She stood to leave, then hesitated. By the way, how's the new family in 2B settling in? The question seemed casual, but Ethan recognized it as another example of Olivia's meticulous attention to detail. The Martinez family, a single mother with 3 children, who had been facing eviction from their previous apartment, had moved into Parkview last week as part of Phoenix's community housing initiative. They're doing well. The kids love the playground equipment that was just installed, and Mrs. Martinez mentioned she might be interested in helping with the community garden once it's established. Olivia nodded, satisfied. Good, that's exactly what we want to see. She turned to leave, then glanced back. Oh, and Ethan? The board was impressed with your quarterly presentation. Very impressed. With that, she was gone, leaving Ethan with a strange flutter in his chest that he chose not to examine too closely. Later that evening, after pizza and Noah's enthusiastic retelling of how his dinosaur report had earned him the coveted Science Star of the Week title, Ethan sat on their small balcony with a cup of tea. The Parkview apartments looked different now. The crumbling concrete of the courtyard replaced with fresh pavers and planters. The rusty playground equipment upgraded to colorful, safe structures that buzzed with children's laughter each afternoon. But the transformation wasn't just physical. There was a new energy in the building, a sense of community that hadn't existed before. Neighbors who had once passed each other in hallways without acknowledgement now stopped to chat. The elderly couple in 4A brought homemade cookies to welcome new residents. The teenagers who had once loitered suspiciously by the side entrance now helped younger kids with homework in the newly established study room. It was as if Olivia's philosophy, that dignity and opportunity could transform not just buildings, but lives, was proving itself true before Ethan's eyes. His phone buzzed with an email notification from Sharon Chen, Olivia's assistant, with the Philadelphia trip details. The itinerary was meticulously planned, including a note that they'd be staying at a hotel with an indoor pool. For Noah, since Olivia mentioned he loves swimming. Ethan stared at this small detail, oddly touched. He'd mentioned Noah's love of swimming exactly once during a casual conversation weeks ago. Yet Olivia had remembered and incorporated it into the trip planning. It was this attention to human details, he realized, that made her such a successful businesswoman, despite her unconventional methods. His phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. The screen displayed "Mom calling," a weekly occurrence that, had once filled him with dread during the depths of his financial troubles, when every conversation felt like navigating a minefield of concerned questions he couldn't answer honestly. "Hi, Mom," he answered, his voice lighter than it had been in such calls for months. "Ethan, honey, how are you? How's my favorite grandson?" "We're good, Mom, really good, actually." And for the first time in a long time, he meant it without qualification. "You sound better," she observed, the relief evident in her voice. "That new job must be working out." "It is." He paused, then added, "Actually, Noah and I are going to Philadelphia next week for work." His mother's surprise was audible. "Philadelphia? Ethan, that's wonderful. It'll be good for you both to get away for a bit." "Yeah, I think so too." After catching up on family news and promising to call when they returned from Philadelphia, Ethan ended the call, feeling strangely emotional. His mother had been his steadfast supporter through Emily's illness and death, through the layoffs and financial freefall. She had offered to have them move in with her in Cleveland multiple times, but Ethan had resisted, determined to stand on his own feet. Now, hearing the relief in her voice at his improving circumstances made him realize just how worried she had been. A small noise from inside drew his attention. Noah stood in the doorway of the balcony, clutching his stuffed brachiosaurus, his expression troubled. "Hey, buddy, what's up? Can't sleep?" Noah shook his head, stepping out onto the balcony. "I had a dream about Mom." Ethan's heart tightened. These moments still came, less frequently now, but always unexpectedly. He patted the chair beside him, and Noah climbed up, leaning against his father's side. "Want to tell me about it?" Noah traced a pattern on the dinosaur's fabric with his finger. "She was in our old house, in the kitchen. She was making those pancakes with the chocolate chips inside." His voice was small, careful. "She asked me if I was happy." Ethan swallowed hard. "And what did you tell her?" "I said yes." Noah looked up, his eyes serious in the dim light. "That was okay to say, right? Even though I still miss her." Ethan pulled his son close. "That was exactly right, Noah. Mom would want you to be happy. Missing her and being happy can both be true at the same time." Noah nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, looking at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. "Dad? Is Ms. Olivia your girlfriend?" The question was so unexpected that Ethan nearly spilled his tea. "What? Nobody. She's my boss. Why would you think that?" Noah shrugged. "You smile different when she's around, like how you used to smile at Mom." Children and their devastating observations. Ethan struggled for a response that acknowledged his son's perception without confirming feelings he himself wasn't ready to examine. "Miss Olivia is someone I respect very much," he said carefully. "She gave us a chance when we really needed one, but she's not my girlfriend." "Could she be?" Noah asked, with the directness only children can muster. "I wouldn't mind. She knows about dinosaurs." Ethan couldn't help but laugh. In Noah's world, dinosaur knowledge was apparently a primary qualification for potential stepmothers. "It's complicated, Bud. Ms. Olivia is a very important businesswoman with a lot of responsibilities. And we're doing okay, just the two of us, right?" Noah nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. "3 is a good number too, though. Like the 3 points on a triceratops's face." With that profound observation, he slid off the chair. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" "Of course," Ethan replied, following his son inside and trying not to dwell on the unexpected turn their conversation had taken. Later, with Noah breathing steadily beside him, Ethan found himself replaying Olivia's earlier visit to his office. There had been something in her manner, a warmth beyond professional courtesy perhaps, that he hadn't allowed himself to notice until Noah's innocent question forced it into his awareness. But pursuing such thoughts seemed foolish. Olivia, Jen was not only his employer, but also a successful CEO who had built Phoenix Holdings from nothing. What could she possibly see in a single father who had been on the brink of homelessness just months ago? No, Ethan decided as sleep finally claimed him. Some doors were better left unopened, no matter how inviting they might appear. The Philadelphia trip began with the kind of minor disaster that Ethan had feared might derail the entire experience. Noah threw up on the plane. Whether from excitement or anxiety was unclear, but the result was the same. A mortified 7-year-old, a flustered flight attendant, and Ethan desperately trying to manage the situation while seated across the aisle from his impeccably composed boss. To Olivia's credit, she had simply signaled a flight attendant, produced wet wipes from her seemingly bottomless handbag, and calmly assisted with the cleanup while Ethan took Noah to the tiny bathroom to change his shirt. "I ruined everything," Noah whispered miserably as Ethan helped him into the clean t-shirt from their carry-on. "You didn't ruin anything," Ethan assured him. "People get sick on planes all the time. It's no big deal." When they returned to their seats, Olivia was engaging the surrounding passengers in conversation, somehow transforming the awkward incident into a shared human moment that had people smiling sympathetically rather than grimacing in disgust. "Feeling better?" she asked Noah gently. He nodded, still embarrassed. "Good. The first time I flew, I was about your age, and I was so nervous I hiccuped the entire flight." 3 hours of non-stop hiccups. She demonstrated with a few exaggerated hiccups that made Noah giggle despite himself. "The gentleman next to me asked to be reseated." By the time they landed in Philadelphia, Noah had recovered both his composure and his enthusiasm, pressing his face against the window as they descended and pointing out landmarks he recognized from his school lessons about American history. Their hotel was in Center City, a sleek modern building that contrasted sharply with Millfield's faded architecture. Noah's eyes widened as they entered the lobby, with its soaring ceilings and contemporary art installations. "This looks like a spaceship," he whispered to Ethan, who had to agree the aesthetic was a far cry from their modest apartment. Olivia checked them in efficiently, handing Ethan a key card. "You and Noah are in 1214. I'm in 1216, just next door. There's a connecting door if you need anything." Ethan nodded, oddly touched by this consideration. She had arranged their rooms to be adjacent but separate, respecting their privacy while remaining accessible. It was a small gesture that somehow perfectly captured Olivia's approach to everything. Thoughtful, practical, and attentive to unspoken needs. Their room was spacious and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city skyline. Noah ran immediately to the window, pressing his palms against the glass in wonder. "Dad, look how high we are. We can see everything." Indeed, Philadelphia sprawled below them. A blend of historic architecture and modern skyscrapers, all bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. For a moment, Ethan saw the city through his son's eyes, not just buildings and streets, but possibility, adventure, a world larger than the struggles that had consumed their lives for so long. A gentle knock at the connecting door interrupted his reverie. Olivia stood there, changed from her travel outfit into a casual but elegant ensemble of dark jeans and a silk blouse. "I thought you might like to see the pool before dinner," she suggested, directing the invitation primarily to Noah, who immediately began bouncing on his toes. "Can we, Dad? Please?" Ethan glanced at his watch. They weren't scheduled to meet the current property owners until tomorrow morning. "Sure, why not? Let me find your swim trunks." 20 minutes later, Noah was gleefully splashing in the hotel's indoor pool, while Ethan and Olivia sat at a small table nearby, both still fully dressed. "You're not swimming?" Olivia asked, noticing Ethan's lack of swimwear. He shook his head. "I'm good just watching. He needs supervision. He's still learning." Olivia nodded, her eyes following Noah's enthusiastic if somewhat uncoordinated doggy paddle across the shallow end. He's a brave kid. Most children would still be traumatized by the plane incident, but he's already bounced back. He's resilient. Ethan agreed, pride evident in his voice. Always has been, even through everything. He didn't need to elaborate. Olivia knew about Emily's death from her background research on him. Like his father, she observed quietly. Their eyes met briefly, and Ethan felt that same strange flutter in his chest that he'd experienced in his office. He looked away quickly, focusing on Noah. "I wasn't always resilient," he admitted. "After Emily died, after losing my job, there were days I didn't think I could get out of bed. The only reason I did was Noah." Olivia was silent for a moment. That's how resilience often works. It's not about never falling. It's about having a reason to get back up. There was something in her tone, a depth of understanding that suggested personal experience rather than philosophical observation. Ethan found himself curious about her story beyond the carefully curated professional biography on the Phoenix Holdings website. "Can I ask you something?" he said, turning to face her. "That night at the store, you said you were once truly homeless. Was that real?" Olivia's expression remained neutral, but her eyes reflected something deeper. "Yes. From ages 16 to almost 19, I lived on the streets of San Francisco. It wasn't research then, it was survival." The revelation hung between them, reshaping Ethan's understanding of the composed, successful woman beside him. "What happened?" he asked softly. Olivia's gaze drifted to the pool, where Noah was now practicing floating on his back, his face a study in concentration. The short version: "My father died when I was 15. My mother couldn't cope, turned to alcohol, then harder substances. Home became unsafe. I left with $57 and a backpack of clothes." Her voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. "I thought I had a plan. I was wrong. The money ran out in 2 weeks. The hope took longer, but it ran out too." Ethan remained silent, sensing there was more. "I was standing outside a convenience store one night, hadn't eaten in 2 days. A man stopped, not much older than I was, maybe mid-20s. He gave me his lunch, a sandwich he'd just bought. Then he came back the next day with a local paper, pointed out a shelter that was accepting young people, and gave me $5, everything in his wallet." She turned to Ethan, her eyes clear and direct. "He had no reason to help me, no reason to come back, but he did. And that $5 didn't just buy me food. It bought me the belief that maybe I was worth helping after all." "What happened to him?" Ethan asked. "Did you ever find him again?" A small, sad smile touched Olivia's lips. "No. I never even knew his name. But I promised myself that if I ever got on my feet, I would do for others what he did for me. See them when they were invisible. Help them not just with resources, but with dignity." The parallels to his own encounter with Olivia were obvious, but Ethan still couldn't quite reconcile the powerful CEO with the homeless teenager she described. How did you go from there to this?" He gestured vaguely at their surroundings, the implicit success it represented. "The usual American dream narrative. Hard work, education, lucky breaks," Olivia said, her tone shifting to something lighter. "I got into a program for homeless youth, earned my GED, worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college, transferred to Berkeley on scholarship." She shrugged, as if summarizing a decade of struggle in a few sentences was sufficient. "Real estate was where I landed because shelter, having it or lacking it, shaped my life so profoundly." Before Ethan could respond, Noah called out from the pool, "Dad, Miss Olivia, watch me swim underwater." They both turned their attention to Noah's demonstration, applauding his achievement of swimming perhaps 2 feet beneath the surface before popping up with a triumphant grin. "Very impressive," Olivia called, her professional demeanor momentarily replaced by genuine warmth. The moment of personal disclosure had passed, but it had left Ethan with a new understanding of Olivia's motivations and perhaps his own unlikely place in her carefully constructed world. Dinner that evening was at a casual pizza place near the hotel. Noah's choice, enthusiastically supported by Olivia, who claimed to be a pizza purist with strong opinions on crust thickness. The meal was surprisingly relaxed, with none of the awkwardness Ethan had feared might result from mixing his personal and professional lives. Noah, initially shy around Olivia, had warmed considerably after the pool incident, peppering her with questions about Philadelphia, dinosaurs, naturally, and whether she had ever built a skyscraper. "Not personally with my own hands," she replied, seriously to the last question, "though I've been involved in financing several. Buildings are a bit like dinosaurs, don't you think? They have different structures for different purposes, and the really good ones stand the test of time." Noah considered this comparison with the gravity it deserved. So, like a tall, skinny building would be like a brachiosaurus, and a wide one would be like a triceratops. "Exactly," Olivia nodded, "and some buildings, like some dinosaurs, are more adaptable to changing environments than others." Ethan watched this exchange with a mix of amusement and something deeper, a wistful awareness of how easily Olivia had stepped into their small family circle, how natural her presence felt at their table. It was dangerous thinking, he knew. Boundaries existed for a reason, yet he couldn't help but notice how Noah lit up under her attention, or how her professional reserve softened when she spoke to his son. After dinner, they walked back to the hotel through the city streets, Noah between them, occasionally taking both their hands when crossing busy intersections. In these moments, the three of them connected. If only briefly, Ethan felt a completeness he hadn't experienced since Emily's death. It was unsettling, not because it dishonored her memory, but because it revealed how much he had been missing, without even realizing it. Back at the hotel, with Noah finally asleep after the excitement of the day, Ethan stood at the window of their room, looking out at the city lights. The connecting door to Olivia's room remained closed, a physical reminder of the boundaries he needed to maintain. Tomorrow they would visit the property Phoenix was considering, resume their professional roles, and return to Millfield with the brief interlude of almost family concluded. It was better that way, Ethan told himself. Safer, less complicated. Yet as he turned from the window and prepared for bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irrevocably between them. That in sharing her past, Olivia had invited him to see her not just as Ms. Chen, CEO of Phoenix Holdings, but as Olivia, a woman who had once been as lost as he had been, who understood survival and sacrifice and the power of small kindnesses. And that glimpse, once seen, could not be unseen. The Philadelphia property exceeded all expectations. A former textile factory with soaring ceilings, massive windows, and the kind of architectural bones that made Ethan's professional heart race. The tour lasted 3 hours, with Ethan taking meticulous notes and photographs, already envisioning how the space could be transformed while preserving its industrial heritage. Olivia moved through the building with quiet authority, asking pointed questions about zoning restrictions, utility capacities, and neighborhood demographics. She exhibited none of the personal openness from the previous evening, once again the consummate CEO. Yet occasionally, when a particular architectural detail caught her attention, she would glance at Ethan with a small smile of shared appreciation that felt almost intimate. The current owner, a developer named Richard Hargrove, clearly expected to intimidate Olivia with technical jargon and dismissive comments about realistic renovations costs, not realizing he was dealing with someone who had personally researched every property Phoenix had ever acquired. By the end of the tour, Hargrove's condescension had faded to grudging respect. "You've done your homework, Ms. Chen," he admitted, as they stood in what had once been the factory's main floor. "But you should know I've had interest from several national developers. Your community-focused approach is admirable, but perhaps not competitive in this market." Olivia simply nodded. "We appreciate your time, Mr. Hargrove. Phoenix will submit our offer by Wednesday." Her tone was pleasant but final, ending the conversation without revealing her hand. As they walked back to their hired car, Ethan couldn't contain his enthusiasm. "That space is incredible. The light alone would make it perfect for artist studios on the top floor, and the ground level could become mixed retail with affordable housing units above." Olivia glanced at him, her professional mask slipping just slightly. "You're thinking exactly what I'm thinking. The neighborhood needs economic revitalization, but without displacing current residents." "Gentrification without displacement," Ethan agreed. "It's possible with the right approach." Noah, who had been remarkably patient throughout the tour, tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Can we go see the Liberty Bell now? You promised." Ethan checked his watch. Their flight back to Millfield wasn't until tomorrow morning. "I think we have time for some sightseeing, if that's okay with Ms. Chen." Olivia hesitated only briefly. "Actually, I've never seen the Liberty Bell myself. It would be educational for all of us." And so their afternoon transformed from business to pleasure, with Noah leading the way through Philadelphia's historic district, fueled by ice cream and historical facts he'd learned in school. Watching his son bounce excitedly between exhibits at Independence Hall, Ethan felt a profound gratitude for this unexpected day, not just for the professional opportunity, but for the chance to see Noah thriving in a new environment, curious and confident. "He's a remarkable child," Olivia observed quietly, as they watched Noah press his nose against a display case containing Benjamin Franklin's spectacles. "He is," Ethan agreed. "Sometimes I worry that he had to grow up too fast after Emily died. But then he does something so purely 7-year-old that it reassures me." Olivia nodded. "Children are surprisingly adaptable. They don't need perfect circumstances. They just need to know they're securely loved." There was something in her tone, a wistfulness perhaps, that made Ethan wonder about her own childhood. Before the hardships she'd described, had she known that security before it was ripped away? He wanted to ask, but sensed it might cross one of the invisible boundaries that still existed between them despite yesterday's revelations. As the afternoon light began to fade, they made their way back toward the hotel, Noah walking between them as he had the previous evening. This time, when he reached for their hands at crosswalks, it felt less like coincidence and more like a pattern forming. The three of them connected, however, briefly. "Dad, I'm hungry," Noah announced as they approached the hotel. "We can order room service," Ethan suggested, mentally calculating how much he could reasonably expense to Phoenix for meals. Olivia shook her head. "Actually, I know a place nearby that serves the best cheesesteaks in Philadelphia. It's a local institution." She glanced at Ethan. "Unless you'd prefer something else?" The invitation was clear. Another meal together, another extension of their temporary family unit. Ethan knew he should probably suggest a quiet dinner in their room, a return to professional distance. Instead, he found himself nodding. "A cheesesteak sounds perfect. Lead the way." The restaurant was indeed a local institution, no frills, crowded with both tourists and natives, the air thick with the scent of grilling meat and onions. They squeezed into a small booth, Noah next to Olivia, Ethan across from them. The image they presented, Ethan realized with a start, was exactly that of a family enjoying a vacation meal. "So what's the verdict on Philadelphia?" Olivia asked Noah as they waited for their food. "It's awesome," he declared without hesitation. "It has the Liberty Bell and the rocky steps, and this place has chocolate milk." He held up his glass as evidence of the city's excellence. Olivia laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that Ethan had rarely heard from her. "Those are excellent criteria for evaluating a city. I'll have to incorporate them into Phoenix's acquisition metrics." Noah beamed, clearly delighted to have made her laugh. "Would you buy buildings here, like you did in Millfield?" "I'm considering it," Olivia replied, unconsciously smoothing Noah's perpetually rumpled hair. The gesture was so maternal, so natural, that Ethan felt his chest tighten. "The building we saw today has a lot of potential. Will we come back to help fix it up?" Noah asked, the "we" slipping out so easily that neither adult corrected him. Olivia glanced at Ethan, something unreadable in her expression. "That would depend on your dad. He has an important job at Parkview already." Noah turned expectantly to Ethan, who found himself suddenly on the spot. "We'll see, buddy. The Philadelphia project is still just a possibility right now." Their cheesesteaks arrived, momentarily diverting the conversation to more immediate concerns, like the proper way to eat the messy sandwiches and whether ketchup was an acceptable addition. Olivia insisted it was not, to Noah's disappointment. As they ate, Ethan observed how comfortable Noah had become with Olivia in just 2 days. His son was naturally friendly, but this was different, a kind of easy familiarity that suggested he'd already mentally incorporated her into their small family circle. It was both heartwarming and concerning. What happened when they returned to Millfield and normal professional boundaries resumed? The walk back to the hotel was quieter, all three of them full and slightly tired from the day's activities. Noah leaned against Ethan's side, his earlier energy fading as bedtime approached. "I think someone's ready to crash," Ethan observed, as Noah yawned for the 3rd time in as many minutes. "Not tired," Noah protested weakly, even as his eyes drooped. Back at the hotel, Olivia accompanied them to their door. "I should check in with the office," she said, already reaching for her phone. "I'll see you both in the morning. The car will pick us up at 8 for the airport." Ethan nodded, oddly disappointed by her businesslike tone. "Thanks for today, the tour and everything else." She paused, her professional mask slipping just slightly. "It was my pleasure, truly." Inside their room, Ethan helped her half asleep. Noah through his bedtime routine, tucking him into the hotel bed with his dinosaur close at hand. Within minutes, the boy was sleeping soundly, the day's adventures having finally caught up with him. Ethan stood by the window, looking out at the Philadelphia skyline, his mind replaying moments from the day. Olivia's focused professionalism during the property tour, her unexpected suggestion to see the Liberty Bell, her gentle laugh at the restaurant. Each interaction added another layer to his understanding of her, yet she remained enigmatic in many ways. A soft knock at the connecting door startled him from his thoughts. When he opened it, Olivia stood there, still dressed but with her professional armor slightly lowered, her hair released from its tight bun, her feet bare. "I thought you might want to discuss the property while it's still fresh," she said, holding up a tablet with the photos they'd taken. "If it's not too late?" "No, it's fine. Noah's already out cold," Ethan replied, stepping aside to let her in. "Kid sleeps like a rock once he's down." Olivia glanced at the sleeping form, bundled under the hotel duvet, a small smile touching her lips. He had quite a day. "We all did," Ethan agreed, gesturing toward the small table by the window where they could talk without disturbing Noah. For the next hour, they discussed the Philadelphia property in detail, zoning possibilities, renovation challenges, community needs, and financial projections. It was entirely professional on the surface, Yet there was an undercurrent of something more personal in their easy exchange of ideas, the way they built on each other's suggestions, their shared vision of what the space could become. "You see it, don't you?" Olivia asked suddenly, setting down her tablet. The potential, not just in the building, but in what it could mean for the neighborhood. Ethan nodded. "I do. It's what drew me to architecture in the first place. Creating spaces that change how people live, work, connect." "It's more than that, though," she pressed. "Most architects can see potential in buildings. You see it in people, too." The observation surprised him. "I don't know about that." "I do," Olivia said simply. "I've watched how you interact with the Parkview residents, how you've incorporated their needs into the renovation plans, not as abstract concepts, but as individuals with specific stories." Her praise warmed him unexpectedly. "I just try to listen. People usually know what they need if someone bothers to ask." "That's rarer than you might think." She paused, her expression turning contemplative. "Ethan, I have a proposition for you." Something in her tone made him straighten slightly. "Okay." "I'd like to offer you a more senior position within Phoenix, Director of Community Architecture, overseeing projects in multiple locations, including Philadelphia if we acquire this property." She spoke carefully, watching his reaction. "It would mean more responsibility, more travel, but also significantly higher compensation and the opportunity to implement your ideas on a larger scale." Ethan blinked, caught completely off guard. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to answer now," Olivia assured him. "Think about it. Talk to Noah. It would be a big change." "It would," Ethan agreed, his mind already racing with possibilities and complications. Travel would be challenging with a 7-year-old. Olivia nodded. "We could structure it to minimize disruption. 3 days a week in Philadelphia initially, with flexibility to bring Noah when it makes sense, like during school breaks." The fact that she had clearly thought through the logistics to accommodate his family situation touched him deeply. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why me? There must be dozens of architects with more experience, better connections, more impressive portfolios." Olivia considered the question seriously. Experience can be gained, connections can be made. What can't be taught is the particular perspective you bring, someone who understands both sides of the equation. You've been the struggling tenant and the skilled professional. That dual perspective is invaluable to what Phoenix is trying to accomplish. Her answer was perfectly reasonable, entirely professional. Yet Ethan sensed there was more she wasn't saying. "Is that the only reason?" he asked quietly. The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. For a moment, Olivia's carefully maintained composure faltered slightly, revealing a flash of uncertainty that was almost startling in someone usually so self-assured. "It's the reason I can officially put in the proposal to the board," she said. Finally, her voice softer than before. "The other reasons are complicated." Before Ethan could respond, Noah stirred slightly in his sleep, mumbling something about dinosaurs before settling again. The brief interruption seemed to break whatever moment had been building between them. Olivia stood, gathering her tablet. "Think about the offer. We can discuss it further when we're back in Millfield." "I will," Ethan promised, walking her to the connecting door. "And thank you not just for the opportunity, but for today. Noah had an amazing time." So did I," she admitted with a small smile. "More than I expected." She paused in the doorway, hesitating as if there was more she wanted to say. Instead, she simply nodded and returned to her room, closing the door softly behind her. Ethan stood for a moment staring at the closed door, feeling as if something significant had just occurred, even if he couldn't quite define what it was. The job offer was extraordinary, certainly, but it was the undercurrent of their conversation, the things left unsaid, that occupied his thoughts as he prepared for bed. Lying in the darkness beside his sleeping son, Ethan found himself imagining a different life, one where his career flourished again, where Noah experienced new cities and opportunities, where perhaps there was room for someone else in their small family unit. It was a dangerous line of thinking, blurring professional and personal in ways that could lead to disappointment. Yet as he finally drifted toward sleep, Ethan couldn't help but feel that something had been set in motion that evening, something that neither he nor Olivia could easily turn back from. The flight home to Millfield was quieter than their outbound journey. Noah, tired from the weekend's adventures, dozed for most of the short trip. Olivia worked on her laptop, responding to emails and making notes, every inch the focused CEO. If there was any lingering awkwardness from their conversation the previous evening, she gave no indication of it. Ethan used the time to jot down thoughts about the Philadelphia property, ideas that had come to him overnight. If he did accept the position Olivia had offered, and the possibility was becoming more tempting by the hour, he wanted to hit the ground running with a clear vision for the project. As they descended toward Millfield Regional Airport, Ethan was struck by how different the small industrial city looked from the air compared to Philadelphia's sprawling urban landscape. Once the center of textile manufacturing for the region, Millfield had been in steady decline for decades, hollowed out by factory closures and economic migration. Yet from above, with the late afternoon sun gilding the river that cut through its center, there was a certain beauty to it, a resilience. In its stubbornly standing factories and close-packed neighborhoods. "It looks different from up here," Olivia remarked, glancing out the window beside him, "more cohesive." "Perspective changes everything," Ethan agreed. "From the ground, all you see are the vacant storefronts and crumbling infrastructure. From up here, you can imagine what it could be again." She turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Is that what you want, to help revitalize places like Millfield?" "I think so," Ethan said slowly. "When I was younger, I wanted to design gleaming skyscrapers with my name attached to them. Now I'd rather create spaces that actually improve people's daily lives, even if nobody ever knows who designed them." Olivia nodded. "That's exactly the philosophy behind Phoenix. Not restoration for the sake of profit or prestige, but for the sake of community." As the plane touched down with a gentle bump, Ethan realized how much his perspective had shifted in just a few months. From the desperate man counting coins at a grocery checkout to someone being offered a director-level position at a growing company. From seeing Millfield as the place where his life had fallen apart to possibly viewing it as where his redemption had begun. The drive from the airport was filled with Noah's excited recounting of their adventures to the driver, a Phoenix employee named Marcus, who listened patiently to detailed descriptions of the Liberty Bell and the most awesome cheesesteak ever. When they reached Parkview Apartments, Ethan was struck by a strange sensation. The building simultaneously felt like home and like a temporary way station on a journey to somewhere else. He helped Noah with his small suitcase, then turned to Olivia, who remained in the car. "Thank you again for including us in the trip," he said, unsure how to navigate the transition back to their normal professional relationship. "I'll need your decision by Friday," she replied, her tone gentle but businesslike. "The Philadelphia closing timeline is aggressive if we move forward." Ethan nodded. "You'll have it." With a final wave to Noah, she directed Marcus to continue onto the Phoenix regional office, leaving Ethan and Noah standing in front of Parkview with their small suitcases and a weekend's worth of memories that had somehow changed everything. Inside their apartment, Ethan was immediately struck by how small it seemed after the spacious hotel rooms. Not inadequate, they had everything they needed, but confined in a way he hadn't noticed before. Noah seemed to feel it too, wandering from room to room with unusual quietness. "You okay, buddy?" Ethan asked, kneeling to his son's eye level. Noah nodded, then asked, "Dad, would we move to Philadelphia if you take the new job?" The directness of the question caught Ethan off guard. He hadn't realized Noah had overheard enough of his conversation with Olivia to understand what was being offered. "Eventually, maybe," he answered honestly. "At first, I'd probably travel back and forth while you stayed in school here." Noah considered this with the serious expression he reserved for important decisions. "I liked Philadelphia. And Miss Olivia lives there sometimes, right? She travels between Phoenix's different offices," Ethan explained. "Philadelphia would be a new one." "So we'd see her more?" Noah pressed. There it was, the question that revealed his son's underlying concern. In just 2 days, Olivia had made enough of an impression that Noah was factoring her into his concept of their future. It was both touching and alarming. "Noah," Ethan began carefully, "Ms. Olivia is my boss. She's offering me a job opportunity because she thinks I would be good at it, not because of any personal connection." Even as he said the words, Ethan knew they weren't entirely true. There was something personal developing between them, undefined but undeniable. Noah, with a child's uncanny instinct for emotional undercurrents, had clearly sensed it. "She likes us," Noah stated with absolute certainty. "And you smile more when she's around, like how you used to smile with Mom." It was the second time Noah had made this observation, and Ethan couldn't dismiss it as easily as before. Had he been so transparent? Or was Noah simply hoping for a maternal figure in their lives and projecting that onto Olivia because of her kindness toward him? It's complicated, buddy," Ethan said finally. "Adult relationships usually are. Right now, I need to decide about this job based on what's best for us, for our family." Noah nodded solemnly. "I think you should take it. You seemed happy when you were talking about the building ideas." Once again, his son's perception caught him by surprise. Noah hadn't just noticed Ethan's interactions with Olivia. He'd registered his father's renewed passion for his work, something that had been missing during the desperate months of job searching and financial struggle. "I seemed happy, huh?" Ethan said, pulling Noah into a hug. "Yup. And you designed buildings again, like before Mom got sick." The simple observation hit Ethan with unexpected force. It was true. In Philadelphia, discussing possibilities for the old factory, he had reconnected with the architect he used to be, the one who saw potential and beauty where others saw only decay, the one who had been slowly suffocating under the weight of grief and financial pressure for too long. "I'll think about it," Ethan promised, ruffling Noah's hair. "Now, how about we unpack and then make some dinner? Zoe brought groceries for us yesterday." As they settled back into their routine, Ethan found his thoughts returning repeatedly to Olivia's offer and what it might mean for their future. The professional opportunity was exceptional, certainly, but there was also the undefined personal element that both attracted and concerned him. That evening, after Noah was in bed, Ethan sat at his small desk with a notepad, attempting to organize his thoughts. He created 2 columns, reasons to accept and reasons to decline. Under accept, he listed career advancement, better financial security for Noah, professional fulfillment, opportunity to create meaningful spaces, chance to help communities, like Philadelphia's factory district. Under decline, he wrote, disruption to Noah's routine, travel demands, potential conflict of interest if personal feelings develop. His pen hovered over that last point. Was he really considering the possibility of a personal relationship with Olivia Chen? The very idea seemed presumptuous. She was accomplished, sophisticated, and could certainly have her pick of suitors who didn't come with the complications of a 7-year-old and a history of financial crisis. Yet there had been moments. The way she smoothed Noah's hair at the restaurant, her vulnerability when sharing her past, the hesitation in her voice when she admitted there were complicated reasons for offering him the position, that suggested the possibility wasn't entirely one-sided. Ethan set down his pen, closing the notepad. The decision about the job needed to be made independently of any personal considerations. That was the only responsible approach. If he accepted, it would be because it was the right career move for him and the right life move for Noah. Anything else would be secondary. With that resolution firmly in mind, he prepared for bed, trying not to notice how quiet the apartment felt after a weekend of Noah's excited chatter and Olivia's thoughtful observations. Trying not to acknowledge how easily he could imagine a different life, one with broader horizons, and perhaps a family that extended beyond just father and son. It was a dangerous line of thinking, he knew, one that could lead to disappointment if he allowed his imagination to outpace reality. Better to focus on the concrete, the professional opportunity at hand, than to build castles in the air about what might develop between him and Olivia Chen. Yet, as sleep finally claimed him, Ethan's last conscious thought was of Olivia's smile. When Noah had made her laugh, unguarded, genuine, and somehow more beautiful than any architectural detail he had admired in Philadelphia. Friday arrived with an unseasonable warmth that hinted at summer, despite the calendar still claiming spring. Ethan had spent the week in a state of constant deliberation, weighing the Philadelphia opportunity from every angle, discussing it with Noah each evening, even creating a detailed spreadsheet analyzing the financial implications. Yet his decision remained unmade, with only hours left before Olivia's deadline. His office at Parkview had become something of a sanctuary during these days of indecision. The renovations on the main building were progressing well, with the community garden set to break ground next week. The Martinez family had already signed up for 2 plots, and Mrs. Abernathy from 4C had volunteered to teach the children about heirloom vegetables. Small changes, meaningful improvements, exactly the kind of work that fulfilled Ethan professionally. Could he achieve the same satisfaction on a larger scale in Philadelphia? Would the increased scope compensate for the loss of this intimate connection with Parkview's community? These questions circled his mind as he reviewed the contractor's latest invoices. A knock at his open door interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Guzman stood there, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Mr. Miller, there's someone here to see you." The building manager stepped aside, revealing Mrs. Martinez, clutching a manila envelope and looking equally anxious. "Mrs. Martinez," Ethan greeted her, rising from his desk. "Please come in. Is everything okay with your apartment?" She entered hesitantly, her eyes darting around the office. "The apartment is perfect, Mr. Miller. Better than anywhere we've lived before." She paused, twisting the envelope in her hands. "I came because I think you should know something about Ms. Chen." Ethan tensed involuntarily. "What about her?" Mrs. Martinez glanced back at Mr. Guzman, who nodded encouragingly. "Show him," he said quietly. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and withdrew several newspaper clippings and printouts. "My cousin works for a real estate company in San Diego," she explained, setting the papers on Ethan's desk. "When I told her about Phoenix Holdings buying Parkview, she sent me these." Ethan looked down at the documents, his confusion giving way to shock as he registered what he was seeing. News articles with headlines like "Mystery Buyer Saves Low-Income Housing Complex" and "Anonymous Donation Prevents Eviction of 200 Families." Photos of renovated buildings bearing striking similarities to Phoenix's approach at Parkview. And in several of the articles, vague references to a female CEO who refused to be named or photographed. "I don't understand," Ethan said, looking up at Mrs. Martinez. "My cousin says this has been happening for years," she replied. "Someone buys struggling properties, renovates them while keeping rent affordable, sometimes even lowers it. Always the same pattern, always anonymous. She believes it's all Ms. Chen, operating through different companies." Ethan looked back at the clippings, noting the dates spanning nearly a decade. "Why are you showing me this?" Mrs. Martinez's expression softened. "Because you should know who you're working for. The rent increase notices that went out when Phoenix first bought Parkview. They were never real. My cousin says it's a test. She announces, increases, then waits to see which tenants approach management with legitimate hardship cases. Those are the ones who get rent reductions instead." The revelation stunned Ethan. He remembered the notices, the panic they had caused throughout the building, including his own sleepless nights, wondering how he would afford the increase. He had been preparing to speak with Mr. Guzman about his situation when the second notice came, stating that after community feedback, Phoenix had decided against any increases for current tenants. "It's true," Mr. Guzman confirmed, stepping further into the office. "I didn't know at first either, but after working with Phoenix for a few months." He shrugged. "Ms. Chen has unusual methods, but her intentions are good." "Why keep it anonymous?" Ethan asked, still trying to process this new information. "My cousin says real charity doesn't seek recognition," Mrs. Martinez said simply. "And maybe Ms. Chen doesn't want other property owners to know what she's doing. It might make acquisitions more difficult if they knew her reputation." After they left, Ethan sat at his desk, surrounded by the evidence of Olivia's secret philanthropic empire. It added yet another layer to his understanding of her, beyond the successful CEO, beyond the former homeless teenager who had rebuilt her life. She was engaged in a systematic effort to provide affordable housing on a scale he hadn't imagined, all while carefully maintaining her privacy. And she had offered him a chance to be part of it. His phone buzzed with a text message from Olivia herself. "Decision time, Mr. Miller. My office at 2 p.m. Ethan stared at the message, then at the clippings spread across his desk. For the first time all week, his path seemed suddenly crystallinely clear. Olivia's regional office occupied the top floor of one of Millfield's few modern buildings, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, and windows that overlooked the river. Her assistant, Sharon, greeted Ethan with a warm smile. "She's expecting you," Sharon said, gesturing toward the glass-walled conference room where Olivia stood looking out at the view, her back to the door. Ethan paused at the threshold, taking a moment to observe her. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair in its usual practical style, her posture as straight and dignified as always. Yet there was something in the set of her shoulders, attention perhaps, or anticipation, that suggested this meeting mattered to her beyond just business. He knocked lightly on the doorframe. Olivia turned, her expression carefully neutral, though Ethan thought he detected a flicker of something more in her eyes. "Right on time," she said with a small smile. "Please sit." Ethan remained standing. "Before we start, I need to ask you something." She tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "Go ahead." "The rent increase notices when Phoenix first acquired Parkview, they were never real, were they?" The question clearly caught her off guard. For a moment, her composed facade faltered. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter," Ethan replied. "What matters is whether it's true." Olivia hesitated, then sighed softly. "It's a filtering method. We need to identify which tenants genuinely need assistance versus those who can afford market rates. The notices help surface those cases quickly, and the rent reductions that follow." She met his gaze directly. "Also real." along with the anonymous property acquisitions in San Diego, Portland, Detroit, and who knows where else. This time, Olivia's surprise was evident. "You've been doing research. Others have been doing it for me," Ethan corrected. "Why keep it secret? Why not take credit for the good you're doing?" Olivia gestured toward the chairs again, and this time Ethan sat. She took the seat opposite him, her professional mask temporarily set aside. "Publicity complicates things," she explained. "Sellers raise prices when they know Phoenix is interested. Politicians want photo opportunities. Wealthy donors expect recognition." She shook her head slightly. "The work itself becomes secondary to the narrative around it." "That's not the whole reason," Ethan pressed gently. Olivia looked down at her hands, a rare moment of vulnerability. "No," she admitted, "it's not." She was quiet for a moment, then continued, "When I was homeless, the most painful part wasn't the physical hardship. It was the way people looked through me, as if I were invisible. Or worse, the way they looked at me with pity or disgust." She raised her eyes to meet his. "The man who helped me, the one with the $5, he looked at me like I was a person, not a charity case, not a problem to be solved, just a human being worthy of basic dignity." Understanding dawned on Ethan. "So you do the same for others. You help without requiring them to perform gratitude or become symbols of your generosity." "Exactly," Olivia said softly. "True charity should restore dignity, not diminish it further." The philosophy resonated deeply with Ethan. It was fundamentally different from the corporate philanthropy he had encountered in his previous work. The showy donations with oversized checks and press releases, the building names sold to the highest bidder. "And now you're offering me a chance to be part of this," he said. Not quite a question. Olivia nodded. "If you want it." "I do," Ethan said without hesitation. "I accept the position." Relief and pleasure mingled in Olivia's expression. "I'm glad. The Philadelphia project needs your perspective." "But I have conditions," Ethan continued, surprising both of them with his boldness. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "First, minimal travel until Noah finishes the school year. No more than one overnight trip per week. Second, he and I stay based in Millfield until we're both ready for a move. No pressure or timeline on that front." "Reasonable, Olivia?" "Agreed." "What else?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Third, complete transparency between us going forward. No more tests or surprises. If we're going to work this closely together, I need to know I can trust what you're telling me." Something shifted in Olivia's expression, a recognition of the underlying message. This wasn't just about professional boundaries. It was about the possibility of something more personal developing between them. "Agreed," she said quietly. "Anything else?" Ethan hesitated, then decided to take the risk. "Dinner with me. Not Phoenix-related, not work discussion, just dinner." The request hung between them, transforming the atmosphere from professional negotiation to something far more vulnerable. For a moment, Olivia seemed genuinely speechless, a rare occurrence for someone so perpetually composed. "That would be crossing a line," she said finally, though her tone lacked conviction. "It would," Ethan acknowledged. "Is that a no?" Olivia studied him with an intensity that might have been uncomfortable if he hadn't come to recognize it as her way of processing important decisions. "It's complicated, Ethan. I'm your employer. You're also the woman who slept on my couch when I thought you were homeless, who connected with my son over dinosaurs and cheesesteaks, who just admitted to running a secret philanthropic empire because you believe in helping people without diminishing their dignity." He leaned forward slightly. "I'd like to know that woman better, outside of work contexts." A small smile touched Olivia's lips. "Noah would be okay with this?" "Noah suggested it, actually, multiple times." Her eyebrows rose. Perceptive. Child. You have no idea, Ethan chuckled. So, dinner. After what seemed like an eternity, Olivia nodded. Dinner. But we keep it private for now, given the professional considerations. Agreed, Ethan said, unable to suppress his smile. Though I should warn you, Noah can spot a secret from a mile away. I'll keep that in mind, Olivia replied, her own smile widening slightly. Now about the Philadelphia project. They spent the next hour discussing work details, both aware that something fundamental had shifted between them, but professionals enough to compartmentalize it for the moment. When Ethan finally left her office, contract signed and project parameters established, there was a lightness in his step that had nothing to do with career advancement. That evening, as he helped Noah with homework at their kitchen table, Ethan debated how much to share with his son. The professional news was straightforward enough, but the personal development was more complicated. So, big news, buddy, he began, watching Noah carefully trace letters in his notebook. I accepted the new job with Ms. Chen. I'll be working on the Philadelphia building project. Noah looked up, his expression brightening. Does that mean we're moving there? Not right away, Ethan explained. I'll travel there sometimes, but we'll stay here until you finish the school year at least. Then we'll decide together what makes the most sense. Noah nodded, accepting this arrangement easily. Will Miss Olivia come visit us here too? The question created the perfect opening. Actually, Ethan said, trying to sound casual, Miss Olivia and I are having dinner together tomorrow night, just the two of us. Noah's pencil stopped mid-letter, his eyes widening. Like a date. Yes, Ethan admitted. Like a date. A slow grin spread across Noah's face. I knew it. I told you she likes us. She likes me, Ethan corrected gently. And it's just dinner, buddy. Don't start planning anything elaborate, okay? Adult relationships develop slowly. Noah looked supremely unconvinced by this caution. Can I stay with Zoe tomorrow night? That's the plan. And remember, this is private for now. It's not something we talk about with other people. Because it's a secret mission, Noah asked hopefully. Ethan laughed. Something like that. Now finish your homework, secret agent. As Noah returned to his letters, Ethan marveled at how easily his son had accepted this development. There was no confusion, no resistance, no concern about loyalty to Emily's memory. Just a simple, childlike acceptance that good things could happen, that their small family might expand, that life continued to evolve. The next evening found Ethan standing in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the third time and wondering when he had last felt this nervous. His wardrobe options were limited. Most of his professional clothes had been sold during the financial crisis, but he had managed to assemble an outfit that seemed appropriate for a first date with someone like Olivia. Dark jeans, a blue button-down, shirt that Emily had always said matched his eyes, and a navy blazer unearthed from the back of his closet. You look handsome, Dad, Noah commented from the doorway, where he stood already packed for his sleepover at Zoe's apartment next door. Thanks, buddy. Ethan gave his tie one final adjustment. Any other advice for your old man? Noah considered. This seriously. Tell her the truth about stuff. Mom always said that's the most important thing in love stories. The simple wisdom caught Ethan off guard. Your mom was pretty smart about those things. Yeah, Noah agreed easily. She'd, like Miss Olivia, I think, they both laugh at your jokes even when they're not that funny. Ethan chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. Thanks for the vote of confidence, kid. After dropping Noah next door with enough snacks and games to fuel a small army of 7-year-olds, Ethan drove to the restaurant Olivia had suggested, an upscale Italian place on the outskirts of Millfield, far enough from Parkview to minimize the chance of running into tenants or colleagues. She was already there when he arrived, seated at a corner table partially screened by a decorative partition. Her appearance momentarily took his breath away, not because she was dramatically different from her work persona, but because of the subtle shifts. Her hair was down, falling in soft waves to her shoulders. She wore a simple emerald dress that complemented her olive skin, minimal jewelry, light makeup that enhanced rather than concealed. "Hi," he said, suddenly feeling 16 again as he took the seat across from her. "You look beautiful." A faint blush colored her cheeks, another departure from her usual composure. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." The initial awkwardness dissipated quickly as they fell into conversation. By mutual, silent agreement, they avoided work topics, instead discovering shared interests in architecture, films, and, surprisingly, vintage record stores. "My father collected vinyl," Olivia explained over appetizers. "It was the one luxury he allowed himself. Every payday, one new record. By the time he died, he had over 2,000 albums, everything from classical to early hip-hop." "What happened to them?" Ethan asked. A shadow crossed her face. "Sold by my mother, mostly for drug money. I managed to save about 50 of his favorites. They're in storage now. I haven't owned a record player since I left home." "Noah and I found one at a thrift store last year," Ethan said. "Restored it as a project during winter break. We only have about 20 records, but there's something special about the ritual of it. Selecting the album, cleaning the vinyl, carefully placing the needle." Olivia smiled. "My father used to say that digital music is convenient, but analog music is an experience. The pops and crackles are part of its character." "You should come over sometime," Ethan suggested. "We could break out the record player. I bet Noah would love to hear about your father's collection." The invitation hung between them, casual on the surface, but laden with deeper significance. It wasn't just about records. It was about allowing Olivia into their home, not as a guest in crisis or as a boss, but as someone who might become a regular presence in their lives. "I'd like that," she said softly. As dinner progressed, Ethan was struck by how different Olivia was in this context. More relaxed, more willing to laugh, more forthcoming about her past. She shared stories from her college years, her early struggles to establish Phoenix Holdings, her disastrous first attempt at property development that nearly bankrupted her. "What kept you going?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. "After that first project failed?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "Stubbornness, partly," she admitted with a small smile, "but also this sense that I had been given a second chance that many people never get. To waste it seemed disrespectful to whoever was watching out for me." "You mean the man with the $5? Him," she nodded, "and others who helped along the way, teachers, mentors, even strangers who showed unexpected kindness." She paused, twirling her wine glass thoughtfully. "There's a responsibility that comes with being rescued." The observation resonated deeply with Ethan. "I've felt that too, since Phoenix, since you gave me the opportunity at Parkview. Like I have to make it count, not just for myself and Noah, but for some larger purpose." "Exactly," Olivia said, her eyes warming with understanding. "It's not guilt exactly, more like awareness. That your story could have ended differently, and you owe it to the plot twist to make it meaningful." They were interrupted by the waiter bringing dessert, a tiramisu they had decided to share. As they took turns with the single spoon, Olivia had requested, "Less sugar that way," she had explained with a wink. Ethan found himself marveling at the unlikely path that had brought them here. "If you hadn't been doing your immersion research, that night," he mused, "if I hadn't gone to that particular store, if Noah hadn't needed milk, I don't believe it was coincidence," Olivia said quietly. "Not entirely." "What then?" She hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Remember, I told you I investigate everyone who shows extraordinary kindness?" Ethan nodded. That's not the whole story, she admitted. The truth is, I've been looking for someone specific for years, the man who helped me in San Francisco. I never knew his name, but I remember his face, his voice, the small scar on his right hand. Each year, I spend those 2 weeks on the streets in different cities, watching for acts of kindness, yes, but also hoping. She looked down, suddenly vulnerable. It's probably foolish after all this time. He might not even be alive anymore. But I keep looking because I want him to know what his $5 did, how it changed everything. Her confession touched Ethan deeply. For all her success and composure, Olivia was still, in some ways, that teenage girl whose life had been transformed by a simple act of human connection. "It's not foolish," he said gently. "It's beautiful, and if you ever do find him, he'll be incredibly proud of what you've built." Olivia looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you for understanding. Not everyone would." "Well," Ethan said with a small smile, "I did give my last nickel to a homeless woman once, so I have some insight into the situation." She laughed, the tension broken. "Your last nickel that apparently yielded a pretty good return on investment." "The best," Ethan agreed, his tone making it clear he wasn't talking about his career. As they left the restaurant, the spring night was unexpectedly cool after the warmth of the day. Olivia shivered slightly in her light dress. Without thinking, Ethan slipped off his blazer and draped it over her shoulders, a gesture so traditional it might have seemed cliched if not for the genuine surprise and pleasure in Olivia's expression. "Such a gentleman," she teased, pulling the jacket close, nevertheless. "Emily drilled that into me on our first date," Ethan admitted. "I forgot my jacket entirely, and she had to freeze the whole walk home. She never let me hear the end of it." They had reached Olivia's car, a modest sedan, rather than the luxury vehicle one might expect from a successful CEO. Ethan walked her to the driver's side, both of them prolonging the moment. "I had a wonderful time," Olivia said, her usual confidence replaced by a hint of uncertainty. "Thank you." "I did too," Ethan replied. "We should do it again. Soon." She nodded, then seemed to make a decision. Rising slightly on her toes, she pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Good night, Ethan." Before he could respond, she had slipped into her car, leaving him standing in the parking lot, fingertips touching the spot where her lips had been, feeling like he was living in a moment that would divide his life into before and after. The drive home was a blur, his mind replaying moments from the evening, her laugh when he told the story of Noah's dinosaur phase, the way she absent-mindedly traced patterns on the tablecloth while describing her college years, the vulnerability in her eyes when she revealed her ongoing search for the man who had helped her. Ethan collected a sleepy Noah from Zoe's apartment, tucked him into bed, then sat on their small balcony, looking out at the same Millfield skyline that had seemed so limited just days ago. Now it appeared full of possibility, not just professionally, but personally. He was falling for Olivia Chen. The realization wasn't shocking or sudden. It was more like acknowledging something that had been quietly developing since that rainy night at the grocery store. What was surprising was the absence of guilt or confusion. It felt right, natural, as if his heart had simply recognized her as someone who belonged in their lives. Whether she felt the same depth of connection remained to be seen. But the soft, a kiss, the easy conversation, the way she had opened up about her past, all suggested that Olivia was at least willing to explore the possibility. As Ethan finally went to bed, he found himself thinking of Emily, not with the aching grief that had been his companion for so long, but with a gentle gratitude. She had taught him how to love, how to be loved, how to build a life with someone. Those lessons hadn't died with her. They had merely been waiting for the right moment to be remembered and applied anew. "I think you'd approve," he whispered into the darkness, a ritual he had abandoned months ago when it became too painful. Tonight, it felt healing instead. "She's different from you. but good different. And Noah adores her already. The silence that answered wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful, accepting, perhaps even blessing. Ethan fell asleep with a sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place, of a story continuing rather than ending. Not despite the past, but because of it. One chapter had closed with Emily's death, but another was beginning with Olivia's entrance into their lives. And this new chapter, unexpected and unplanned as it was, promised to be beautiful in its own right. 6 months transformed everything. The Philadelphia project blossomed under Ethan's direction, with the first phase of renovations completed ahead of schedule. Noah finished 2nd grade with honors and developed an intense interest in urban planning, spending hours designing kid-friendly buildings with his colored pencils. And Olivia, guarded, methodical Olivia, had become a fixture in their lives, her professional mask giving way more often to genuine warmth and spontaneous laughter. Their relationship had evolved with a deliberate slowness that respected both. Noah's adjustment and the complexities of their professional connection. Dinner dates became weekend outings, careful conversations became comfortable silences, and tentative touches became natural embraces. They were building something thoughtful and strong, brick by careful brick. Today marked a significant milestone. After months of planning, Phoenix Holdings was hosting the grand opening of the Philadelphia property's first completed section. Artist studios and community spaces that would serve as the heartbeat of the larger development. It was Ethan's, a vision made manifest, his first major project since rejoining the architectural world. "Dad, hurry up!" Noah called, already dressed in the navy blazer and khaki pants they had purchased for the occasion. "Miss Olivia said we can't be late to our own ceremony." Ethan adjusted his tie, smiling at his son's excitement. The hour hadn't escaped his notice. Noah had fully embraced his role as junior design consultant, his suggestions for a rooftop, garden and hallway reading nooks actually incorporated into the final plans. "Coming, buddy, did you pack your dinosaur?" Noah rolled his eyes with exaggerated patience. "Dad, I'm almost 8. I don't need brachi at fancy business things." The casual dismissal of his longtime stuffed companion caught Ethan by surprise. When had his little boy started growing up? The thought brought a bittersweet pang. Emily would have marked these moments, celebrated these small evolutions. She would have been so proud of the person Noah was becoming. "Well, I think Bracky would enjoy the party," Ethan said lightly, "but it's your call." Noah considered this, then darted back to his room, returning moments later with the worn dinosaur, discreetly tucked into his backpack. "Just in case," he explained seriously. The drive to Philadelphia was filled with Noah's excited chatter about the rooftop garden and how many plants they could fit if they arranged them strategically for optimal growth conditions, a phrase clearly borrowed from Olivia during one of their gardening sessions at Parkview. Arriving at the renovated factory building, Ethan felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. 6 months ago, this had been an abandoned shell collecting dust and graffiti. Now it stood revitalized, the original industrial character preserved. While new purpose flowed through its spaces, Phoenix Holdings had not merely restored a building, they had breathed life back into a forgotten corner of the city. Olivia was waiting for them at the entrance, elegant in a teal dress that complemented her olive skin, her hair arranged in an intricate braid. For the first time at a public Phoenix event, she wasn't attempting to blend into the background or deflect attention. "There are my favorite architects," she called, bending slightly to accept Noah's enthusiastic hug before embracing Ethan with a quick kiss. "The mayor just arrived. Are you ready?" "As I'll ever be," Ethan replied, surveying the growing crowd of community members, press, and local officials. "Though I still think you should be making the speech, not me." Olivia shook her head, squeezing his hand. "This is your vision, Ethan, your design, your community connections. The people should hear from you. The ceremony unfolded on the building's expansive roof garden. Noah's contribution to the design, expanded and enhanced by professional landscapers. As the mayor made introductory remarks, Ethan stood to the side, organizing his thoughts for his own speech, while Noah proudly showed Olivia where they had incorporated his specific plant suggestions. When Ethan was finally introduced, he approached the podium with the confidence of someone who had found his purpose again. The speech he had prepared, full of technical details and acknowledgments, suddenly felt inadequate. This building, he began, gesturing to the structure beneath them, was considered worthless 6 months ago. A relic of another era, too expensive to demolish, too outdated to repurpose. People walked past it every day without seeing its potential. He paused, his gaze finding Olivia in the crowd. But sometimes, the most valuable things are the ones we overlook. Sometimes worth isn't about market value or bottom lines. It's about possibility, about what something or someone could become if given a chance. Olivia's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the speech had veered from their rehearsed version. Phoenix Holdings believes that buildings, like people, deserve second chances, that communities thrive when spaces are designed not just for profit, but for purpose. That true value lies in creating places where people can build meaningful lives. Ethan's voice strengthened as he continued, "I know this personally because 2 years ago I was overlooked too. A single father struggling to keep a roof over my son's head, counting coins at a grocery checkout, wondering if I'd ever find my footing again." A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the standard developer rhetoric they had expected. Then someone saw me, really saw me, when I was at my lowest. Someone recognized value where others might have seen only need. Someone believed I was worth investing in, not just as an architect, but as a human being. Ethan's eyes locked with Olivia's, which now glistened with unshed tears. That someone was Olivia Chen, founder and CEO of Phoenix Holdings, though. She'd prefer I didn't tell you that. She prefers to work anonymously, believing that true charity doesn't seek recognition. Olivia gave a small shake of her head, but there was no real objection in her expression, only a quiet acceptance that perhaps her story, like Ethan's, deserved to be acknowledged. What Phoenix does, what Olivia does, goes beyond real estate development. It's about recognizing the inherent dignity in every person. It's about creating spaces where people can rebuild their lives without sacrificing their self-respect. It's about seeing potential where others see only problems. Ethan gestured to the rooftop garden around them. This building is just wood and brick and glass. But what happens inside it, the art that will be created, the businesses that will grow, the community that will gather, that's the true masterpiece. That's the real investment. From the front row, Noah beamed with pride, his hand securely in Olivia's. They looked, Ethan realized with a surge of emotion, exactly like family. So as we cut the ribbon today, we're not just opening a building, we're opening possibilities. We're affirming that everyone deserves a place to belong, to create, to thrive. We're declaring that second chances aren't just possible, they're transformative. The applause that followed was genuine and enthusiastic. As Ethan stepped away from the podium, his eyes remained on Olivia and Noah, the woman who had rescued him with a job offer, and the son who had anchored him through the darkest days. They were his second chance, his unexpected return on a 5-cent investment. Later, after the official ceremonies concluded and the crowds thinned, Ethan found Olivia alone in one of the building's quiet corners. A reading nook designed according to Noah's specifications, with comfortable window seats overlooking the city. "You went off script," she said, her tone more wondering than accusatory. "I did," Ethan acknowledged, sitting beside her. "I hope that was okay." "You told them about me." About Phoenix's approach. You made it personal. He nodded. Because it is personal. For both of us. Olivia was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city skyline. For years, I've kept my work separate from myself. The anonymity felt safer, cleaner. And now? Ethan asked gently. Now I'm realizing that perhaps my story, our story, might have value beyond its privacy, that maybe someone needed to hear it. Ethan reached for her hand, linking their fingers together, like how you needed to hear your story wasn't over when you were 16. Like how I needed to know my worth wasn't measured by my bank account. She smiled, squeezing his hand. Exactly like that. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only when Noah appeared in the doorway, his backpack clutched to his chest. Dad, Miss Olivia, can I ask you something important? Always, they replied in unison, then exchanged a smile at the synchronicity. Noah approached slowly, unusually serious. If we move to Philadelphia for the new building project, where will we live? The question was pragmatic, yet loaded with deeper meaning. They had discussed the eventuality of relocating more permanently as the Philadelphia project expanded, but had postponed concrete plans until after today's opening. Well, Ethan began carefully, we would find an apartment near your new school, something with enough room for your dinosaur collection and maybe a small garden on the balcony. Noah frowned slightly. But what about Miss Olivia? Would she live with us, or would she live somewhere else? The innocent question hung in the air between the adults, crystallizing months of unspoken thoughts and careful considerations. Olivia recovered first. Noah, that's something your dad and I would need to discuss privately. It's a grown-up decision. But you love each other, Noah stated with a child's straightforward certainty. And you love me, and I love you. So we should be a family. That's how it works in books. Ethan met Olivia's eyes over Noah's head, seeing in them the same mix of surprise, amusement, and tender consideration. He felt himself. Noah, Olivia said gently, kneeling to his level, you're right that love is important for families, but grown-up relationships also need time and care to grow properly. Your dad and I are still getting to know each other in many ways. But you gave him a job when he was sad, and he gave you his last nickel when you pretended to be homeless. That's a really good start for a love story. Noah's logic was impeccable from his perspective. Ethan couldn't suppress a chuckle. He makes a compelling argument. Olivia's expression softened as she looked from Noah to Ethan. He does indeed. Something shifted in that moment. A decision forming not through words, but through the simple recognition of what had already grown between them, of what they had already become to each other. Noah, Ethan said, sitting down so they formed a small circle. What if we told you that Ms. Olivia and I have actually been thinking about the three of us being a family? But we wanted to make sure you were comfortable with the idea first. Noah's eyes widened. Really? You were? Olivia looked momentarily startled, then a slow smile spread across her face as she realized what Ethan was suggesting. We were, she confirmed softly, because you're the most important part of the equation. So we could all live together, and you could help me with my dinosaur research like a mom would? The moment hung suspended, past, present, and possible future converging in a child's simple question. Yes, Olivia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I would be honored to help with your dinosaur research and everything else. Noah launched himself into her arms, nearly knocking her over with the force of his embrace. Over his shoulder, her eyes met Ethan's, questioning, hopeful, certain. Ethan nodded, his own vision blurring slightly. I think what Noah's trying to say is that some investments yield returns you never expected. Some chances are worth taking. Some families are built, not born. And some last dollars, Olivia added softly, find their way home. Up next, you've Got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.